Hello there, my sleep fellows. Tonight, we step into a gentle whisper of magic, a tale quietly folded between the enchanted halls of Hogwarts. It's a story not of battles or great spells, but of something far more delicate, a mystery that tiptoed past students and professors alike, nestled inside an old, forgotten frame that once held a portrait, but no longer did. The painting had vanished, but not with a bang, not with alarm. Rather, it had simply moved. Tonight, you and I will gently follow this soft mystery through stone corridors, candlelit libraries, and dreams hidden in old canvas. A cozy tale filled with magical footsteps and the quiet rustle of secrets. So breathe in slowly, let the lantern light guide your thoughts, and allow your imagination to settle into the warm embrace of this story. And if you find comfort in these slow, unfolding tales of Hogwarts, don't forget to gently tap the like button, perhaps subscribe, or share this moment with someone who needs a little wonder tonight. But for now, let the world soften around you, and let's begin. Our story begins, as it often should, on a soft autumn evening inside the quietest corner of Hogwarts, the back alcove of the Grand Library. The high-arched windows were fogged by the chill outside, while inside, a gentle warmth lingered from the fireplaces scattered throughout the school. Shelves stretched like slumbering giants, heavy with books that hadn't been opened in decades, their spines whispering to one another in the candlelight. The scent of old parchment, lavender polish, and a trace of enchanted dust curled through the air. Every now and then, a quill softly scratched against parchment in the distance, or a floating candle drifted slowly past the rafters like a quiet guardian of the night. And tucked between two shelves in a place where few students ever wandered, there hung a tall, slender frame. The golden edges were chipped and worn, its corners softened by time. It had once held the portrait of a friendly-looking wizard in green robes who used to wink at passing students and occasionally offer helpful hints about the library's more stubborn staircases. But now, the painting was gone, not torn, not stolen, just empty. The curious thing? No one seemed to remember his name, not even the portraits beside it, and yet, somehow, someone had seen the frame itself. The frame, not the portrait, quietly shifting from one wall to another, always at night, always just out of the corner of the eye, not with magic crackles or shimmering light, but like a shadow gently rearranged. So our journey begins, not with a great spell, but with a question quietly breathing in the candlelit silence. Where does an empty painting frame go when it no longer remembers who it once held? Let's follow the hush and gently find out. To understand how this quiet mystery begins to unfold, we must meet the gentle heart at the center of our story, Hermione Granger. Though she was known throughout Hogwarts for her brilliant mind and sharp attention to detail, tonight she was simply a tired student seeking a peaceful corner of the castle to finish the last few pages of her reading. Hermione loved the library in a way few others truly understood. To her, it was more than shelves and ink. It was a living, breathing sanctuary where silence wrapped gently around her shoulders like a warm shawl. And on this particular evening, With the soft breeze of autumn drifting through cracked windows, she carried a small stack of books close to her chest, her steps quiet and familiar. Behind her, Harry and Ron followed at a slower pace. Harry, as always, had a thoughtful look in his eyes, as though part of him were listening to something far beyond the present moment. Ron, on the other hand, looked as though he had entered the library under protest. His tired expression made it clear that he would much rather be in the common room by the fire, enjoying a warm pumpkin pasty. "Come on, Ron," Hermione whispered, not unkindly. "It will only take a moment. I just need to return this book on ancient enchantments." Ron sighed dramatically, but there was affection in his tired complaint. "Hermione, sometimes I think these books like you more than people do." Harry chuckled quietly as they walked deeper into the aisles. "She likes them too much to notice." Hermione only smiled, brushing her hand lovingly over the spines of books as she passed. "Books never let you down," she murmured, half to herself. "They always hold the truth." But tonight, the truth was not inside a book. It was waiting for her somewhere she did not expect at all. As the trio reached the farthest corner, the warmth of the library seemed to fade into a quieter, older stillness. The shelves here held books that even Hermione had never dared remove. Dust lay thick, undisturbed. A floating candle hovered gently above, flickering like a sleepy guardian. This was when Harry noticed the strange frame. He paused mid-step, eyes narrowing slightly behind his glasses. "Hermione, was that always here?" Hermione turned, her brow lifting as she looked at the tall, empty frame leaning slightly against the wall, as though it had just arrived moments earlier. Ron blinked, confusion flickering across his face. "But isn't there supposed to be a portrait there?" Hermione stepped closer, her expression soft with curiosity rather than fear. She ran her fingers carefully along the wooden edge. "This frame, it's warm." Harry exchanged a glance with Ron. Warm. Frames didn't just become warm on their own, but Hermione, ever the one who felt magic before she named it, only whispered softly, "I think it wants us to notice it." In that moment, their gentle night took its first quiet. Step toward the unknown, Hermione stood before the empty portrait frame, her eyes tracing its smooth, dark edges, as though memorizing the feel of something ancient and almost sentient. Behind her, Ron shifted his weight restlessly, but Hermione barely noticed. Something about the frame was whispering to her attention, not aloud, not in words, but in a hush that stirred the quiet corners of her mind. The frame itself was unusually tall, nearly as high as the doorways at Hogwarts. Its golden corners were etched with delicate vines and a pattern of stars that shimmered ever so faintly in the dim candlelight. Yet what truly drew them in was not what was inside, but what wasn't. There was no canvas, no painted figure, no scene of a past witch or wizard standing nobly within, only a soft, shimmering emptiness that looked almost like fogged glass, or perhaps a veil that had not yet been lifted. "I don't like it," Ron mumbled, arms crossed. "Empty things that stare back aren't really my thing." Hermione didn't respond. Instead, she gently placed her palm against the lower edge of the frame. The moment her skin made contact, a gentle hum vibrated under her fingertips, a calm and familiar resonance, not unlike the sound of a book being opened to the first page. Then, as if stirred by her presence, the empty space within the frame rippled ever so slightly. The shimmer deepened, and for the briefest moment, the outline of a room appeared, a warm, wood-paneled space with tall windows, old bookshelves, and what looked like a desk with a quill still moving across a piece of parchment. But before any of them could speak, the image dissolved back into blankness. Hermione turned to the others. "Did you see that?" Harry nodded, eyes wide with quiet wonder. "It looked like a room?" Ron took a step back. "Or a trap, just saying." Hermione shook her head gently. "No, that felt like magic, old magic. Not dangerous, but forgotten, like it's waiting for someone to ask the right question." And then, as if in response to her thought, a faint sound filled the air, a soft tapping, like knuckles rapping lightly on wood. It didn't come from the frame, it came from behind it. With great care, they moved the frame aside, revealing nothing more than the bare stone wall of the library, but the tapping continued, rhythmic, patient, like a heartbeat behind stone. Hermione placed her ear to the wall. "There's something behind here." Ron groaned. "Please tell me you're not about to say we should follow it." But Hermione was already walking toward one of the shelves nearby, scanning the dusty tomes until her fingers stopped on a faded red book titled Secrets of Hogwarts' Fifth Wing. She opened it slowly, flipping through aged pages until she found a drawing that made her breath catch. It was the same frame, and below it, a passage written in ink that shimmered faintly in the candlelight. When the portrait is empty and the heart still open, listen for the knock. The dreaming room awaits. Hermione whispered the words aloud, and as she did, the air seemed to shift. A warm breeze stirred the corners of the page. The tapping behind the wall stopped, and then, so gently they barely noticed, a door-shaped outline appeared on the stone behind where the frame had stood. Harry stepped forward, running his fingers across the outline. "It's a hidden door, but no handle." Hermione leaned close, her brow furrowed. "I think it's sealed by something, maybe intention, not touch." She turned toward the frame again, gazing into its shimmer. Slowly, she spoke into the air, her voice calm and kind. "We're not here to harm anything. We're just curious. If you are a guardian of knowledge, we'd like to understand." There was no dramatic flash, no burst of light, only a soft click, like a lock turning after years of stillness. The stone wall eased inward with a whisper, revealing a narrow passage lit by soft, floating orbs of golden light. Ron exhaled slowly. "Well, I suppose we're going in." As they stepped through the doorway, the library behind them faded into a gentle silence once more. The corridor they now entered was smooth and rounded, the walls made of polished stone that glimmered faintly, as if moonlight had been trapped inside them. Each step was silent, their shoes brushing across soft moss that grew along the floor. The air was warm, scented faintly with something floral, perhaps lavender or honeysuckle, and it brought a strange sense of peace with it, like they were walking into a dream gently unfolding. The corridor curved downward, slowly, until they reached a round chamber at the end. At the center was a pedestal, and on it sat a book, its cover wrapped in forest green leather, the edges lined with silver thread. Around the chamber, the walls were covered in murals, soft, fading images that told no single story, but rather 1,000 fragments of magical lives. A young witch casting her first spell under moonlight, a centaur teaching astronomy to students in the forest. A quiet room where two hands met across a table, palms touching gently over candlelight. But the most curious part was what wasn't there. A chair sitting just a few feet away from the pedestal, empty, and above the chair, the same portrait frame, identical to the one in the library, hung motionless on the curved wall. Hermione approached slowly, her breath steady. "It's the same one," Harry nodded, gazing around the room. "But there's no portrait here either." Ron circled the chair, whispering, "It's like someone was here and then wasn't." Hermione reached for the book on the pedestal, opening it with care. The pages were handwritten, every letter neat and deliberate. But instead of a story, the book held thoughts, moments, memories, dreams, not of one person, but of many. "There's no name," she whispered, eyes scanning the page. "Just feelings, like someone was trying to remember something too vast to put into words." Harry sat down in the chair, eyes still on the frame. What if this isn't a portrait, but a doorway? Hermione's eyes lifted to meet his, a soft glow of understanding dawning within her. Or a mirror for memories. The candlelight deepened in tone, the air growing quieter still. There were no answers yet, only clues. But as they sat together, breathing gently in that ancient, dreamlike chamber, none of them felt afraid. The magic wasn't sharp or wild. It was slow and comforting, a lullaby made of ink and memory and old stone. And somewhere, just beyond the shimmer of the empty frame, something stirred, not to scare, but to welcome, to begin. The room had stilled into a hush so deep it seemed even time had slowed. Harry, Hermione, and Ron remained near the pedestal, each silently absorbing the atmosphere around them. The flickering candle-like orbs that hung in midair, the soft moss underfoot, and the shimmering frame that still showed nothing but its golden border. Hermione turned another page of the green-bound book, her fingers brushing gently over lines of handwriting that curved like waves across the parchment. The entries were dreamlike, fragments of thought, feelings without names, reflections that seemed to belong to many voices, not just one. "The vault remembers when I forget. I saw her again today, though she walked past me. Time is slower here, like honey poured over stone." Each passage read like a whisper from a sleeping world, suspended gently in time. Suddenly, the soft humming in the walls returned, a sound that felt more like a presence than a noise. The frame above the empty chair shimmered faintly again, but this time, something formed within it. It was not a person nor a place. It was a candle. A single golden flame floated in the center of the frame, gently swaying. It flickered not with the wind, but with a rhythm like breath. Around the flame, the faintest outlines of what looked like shelves, tall windows, and deep shadows began to take shape. The candle seemed to hover in a hallway, one that none of them recognized. Hermione gasped softly. "That's not the library." Harry stepped closer. "That looks like a different wing of the castle." Ron blinked. "Wait, is that candle moving?" And it was. The flame glided forward, bobbing gently through the strange corridor within the frame, as if urging them to follow. And then, quite impossibly, the frame shimmered once more and rippled outward, like a curtain pulled aside. The image grew larger until it filled the wall, and before they realized it, the frame had transformed into a doorway. Not just an illusion, a passage. The room behind them faded from their awareness, the air drawing them forward like a silent invitation. One by one, they stepped through the golden threshold and into another part of Hogwarts they had never seen. The stone beneath their feet shifted from moss to polished marble. The corridor was long, softly curved, and illuminated entirely by the floating candle that led the way. It danced a few paces ahead, lighting sections of the corridor as it drifted. The walls were lined with old murals, painted tapestries of past events at Hogwarts, some vibrant and some faded, but all alive with gentle motion. Harry turned to Hermione. "This place doesn't exist on the map." Hermione nodded slowly. "That's because it's not a place built with stone. It's a space built with memory." Ron frowned. "What does that even mean?" Hermione touched the wall beside them, watching as the mural beside her shifted. The image showed a young student sitting beneath the stars, studying a constellation chart with a centaur beside her. The stars in the mural twinkled faintly, and the centaur blinked as though caught in a dream. "These aren't paintings," Hermione whispered. "They're moments, preserved somehow, maybe even dreamed." The candle continued ahead, leading them around another soft curve. As they followed it, a new sound drifted into the air, like a lullaby being hummed from somewhere far below. It was comforting, melancholic, and familiar, as though it had once been sung to every student who had ever felt lost in the castle's long halls. The corridor opened into another chamber, circular like the first, but taller, with a domed ceiling painted with constellations. Here, more floating candles appeared, circling slowly overhead. In the center of the room stood a round stone basin. The moment Hermione stepped near it, the candle that had guided them floated downward and gently extinguished itself over the basin, disappearing in a puff of golden smoke. "What is this?" Harry asked quietly, stepping beside her. Hermione peered in. Within the basin was not water, but a swirling pool of soft silver mist, thicker than any pensy of memory. It shimmered with tiny points of light, like stars on a clouded night. The mist moved slowly, revealing shadows beneath its surface, outlines of hallways, a hand reaching for a wand, a book falling from a shelf. "I think it's a vault," she said finally. "Not of things, but of dreams." Ron tilted his head. "Dreams?" Hermione nodded. "It's as if all the dreams dreamt inside Hogwarts, the worries, the wishes, the questions that students whispered to themselves as they fell asleep. They've gathered here, layered upon each other, preserved in time." Harry stared into the basin, mesmerized. Can we see them? As if in answer, the mist rippled outward, and the room dimmed. A memory began to rise. Not a sharp, precise image like in a pensieve, but something softer, as if remembering a dream from childhood. A girl in Ravenclaw robes sat by a window, staring at the stars. Her lips moved silently, and though no sound emerged, they could almost hear her question, "Will I be brave enough when the time comes?" The scene faded. Another followed, a young Hufflepuff boy clutching a music box, whispering a lullaby to the shadows of a dormitory wall. Then a third, a Slytherin student writing a letter and never sending it. Each image was gentle, none were tragic, only deeply human. They were the inner thoughts of students who had long since passed through these halls, echoes of feelings too small for history books, but too meaningful to be forgotten. And then, the mist swirled again. This time, they saw something different. A girl with curly hair, not from the distant past, stood beside the basin, watching a memory unfold. Her eyes were wide. Her robes shimmered faintly with silver thread. Hermione gasped, "It's me." Ron blinked. You're in a dream?" The girl in the memory turned, not toward the basin, but toward them, toward now. And then she smiled. The image faded instantly, the mist falling still. Hermione's heart thudded softly in her chest. "I've never been here before. That wasn't a memory. That was something else." Harry placed a hand on her shoulder. It looked like a future. As they stood in the stillness, another hum filled the room, deeper now, like a chord played on a distant harp. The candlelight in the ceiling danced softly. Around the edges of the chamber, bookshelves began to appear, slowly rising from the floor, filled with tomes bound in colors and materials none of them recognized. The Vault of Dreams was awakening, not just to show them things, but to teach them something. A soft breeze moved through the chamber, carrying words they could not place. Hermione closed her eyes, listening. The whisper was not English, not Latin, but it was magic, the kind of magic that didn't need to be cast. It only needed to be trusted. As they prepared to move deeper into the vault, the silver mist glowed gently once more. There were more dreams waiting, and perhaps some of their own would now be added to the pool. The quiet chamber that held the Vault of Dreams pulsed with a subtle breath, as though the very air were alive. No longer simply a room, it now felt like an ancient being, resting, aware, and faintly curious about the visitors who had wandered in. Harry, Hermione, and Ron stood still for a long moment, letting the silence speak. The silver mist in the central basin shimmered faintly, no longer revealing visions, but holding a patient glow, like it was waiting. The floating shelves that had risen around them formed a circle of memory and wonder, cradling the room in gentle mystery. Hermione took a cautious step toward one of the nearby shelves. The books there looked older than the castle itself, bound in faded velvet, aged leather, and, in one case, something that looked like pressed flower petals sealed beneath glass. Their spines bore no titles, only symbols that seemed to rearrange themselves as her eyes passed over them. She reached for one gently. The moment her fingers touched the book, It opened on its own, pages fluttering until they stopped. Not at the beginning, not at the end, but at a spot chosen for her. The ink shimmered, not black, but a soft twilight blue. The words were gentle, handwritten, and shifting slightly, like thoughts being remembered. It read, "She walked alone through the corridor of stars, where doors had no handles, but opened to truth. She asked the wind what it remembered, and the wind, for once, answered." Hermione read it aloud, softly. Ron looked over her shoulder. "That's not a story. That's poetry," Harry added, "or maybe a memory, told like a dream." They exchanged glances. The room was not just storing the dreams of Hogwarts. It was translating them, wrapping them in warmth and softness, like a lullaby that carried deep meaning, but never needed to be fully understood. Then, a faint creak. It wasn't threatening, more like the weight of something ancient shifting. One of the bookshelves slowly turned, revealing a doorway. It was narrow, arched, and covered in ivy that looked painted in moonlight. The corridor beyond was lined in curved wood, with softly glowing runes carved into every beam. A soft breeze flowed through it, scented faintly with parchment, rain, and something like wildflowers. It felt inviting, but different, less like the past, more like a step towards something unknown. Hermione closed the book and placed it gently back onto the shelf. "I think it wants us to go deeper." Ron hesitated. "Are we sure it's safe?" "No," Harry said with a small smile, "but I don't think this place was meant to hurt anyone." Ron sighed, stuffing his hands in his pockets. That's exactly the kind of thing someone says before falling into a hidden trapdoor. Still, he followed. They stepped through the arched door, and the corridor embraced them with a hush. The further they walked, the more it felt like they were descending, not physically, but emotionally. The space asked nothing of them. It only listened. The runes lit gently as they passed, casting golden reflections along the walls. At the end of the corridor, they found a round alcove with 3 small desks, each with an open journal. The air here was even calmer, as if the vault had brought them to a space where even dreams paused to reflect. Hermione approached one of the journals and sat. The page was blank, but then a word appeared, her name, Hermione. She blinked and looked at Harry's. His, too, had a single word, Harry. And Ron's, though slightly smudged, simply read, Ron. No instruction, no command, only invitation. The quills next to the journals lifted softly into the air, floating just above the parchment. Is it asking us to write? Hermione wondered. Or maybe to remember something, Harry said. Ron looked wary. I don't like magical ink. Last time I tried writing in a book like this, it shouted at me in Murmish. Hermione chuckled. This one seems gentler. They each took a seat. The moment Hermione's hand rested near the quill, it dipped itself into the inkwell and began to move. Without her guiding it, the words it wrote were hers, but they came as if from a place deeper than thought. Not memories she consciously held, but ones that lived quietly within her. A moment under a tree, a sentence spoken long ago by a teacher she hadn't seen since her first year. A question she'd asked herself as a child, that had never been answered. The page accepted it all. Harry and Ron's quills were moving too, slowly, thoughtfully, as if the journals had waited their entire lives to hear what they had to say when no one was listening. When they finally looked up, there was no sense of how much time had passed. It could have been minutes, it could have been hours, but they felt lighter, as if a small stone in their chest had been set down quietly, somewhere safe. The pages glowed faintly, and then the journals closed themselves with a soft thump. Ron stood first. All right, that was strange, but kinda nice. Hermione nodded. I think we just shared a part of ourselves with the vault. Harry turned toward a new shape in the wall. Another frame had appeared, but this time no image swirled within it. Instead, it reflected them. Not like a mirror, but like a memory of what they had just written, their expressions, their quiet thoughts, their silent hopes. Then, the image changed. It showed 3 younger students, not them, but new faces. A girl with silver braids, a boy with wide eyes, another with a wand covered in tiny carvings. They were standing in the same alcove many years from now, and they were reading the journals. Hermione gasped, "They're going to find what we wrote." Ron looked thoughtful. So the vault keeps going. Harry smiled faintly, like a thread connecting every student who ever needed a place to whisper their hopes. As the frame faded and the corridor behind them began to light up once more, a gentle wind stirred. It flowed past them, back toward the circular library chamber, guiding them home. But now, the shelves in the library had changed. Some of the books shimmered with a new glow. Others had moved places, like they were making room, and in the center basin, the mist had begun to spiral again. But this time, the images forming weren't just of the past. They were of possibility. A student overcoming fear, another finding their voice, a teacher quietly passing a piece of forgotten magic to someone who needed it, and somewhere beneath it all, the sound of pages turning. The vault was not a place of endings. It was a place of quiet beginnings. And in that stillness, surrounded by shelves of sleeping dreams, the trio stood together, not needing to speak, simply feeling the magic of a place that remembered everything softly. They didn't need to solve anything. They only needed to feel it. And for now, that was more than enough. As the evening deepened and the last notes of sunlight slipped behind the high towers of Hogwarts, the quiet mystery of the empty frame lingered like a delicate thread in the back of their minds. Harry, Hermione, and Ron had spent much of the day turning over ideas and small clues, but it wasn't until the castle settled into its soft nighttime stillness that a gentle decision emerged among them to explore, not with haste, but with curiosity. "I think we should follow the frame," Hermione said gently, her voice almost blending into the hush of the common room, "not to chase answers, but to understand what it wants to show us." The others agreed, not with dramatic resolve, but with a calm sense of purpose. They waited until the fire burned low and the portraits dozed off again, their painted eyelids fluttering shut. Then, with soft footsteps and hushed breaths, they left the Gryffindor common room behind. The halls of Hogwarts at night felt different, softer, more open, as if the castle itself was watching gently from behind the stone. Shadows moved in a way that wasn't frightening, only thoughtful, and the lanterns glowed just enough to guide them. Every so often, they'd see another painting watching them. Some simply nodded in drowsy approval. Others blinked once and turned away, as if they understood where the trio was headed. They returned to the hallway where the empty frame had once sat, now bare again. But Hermione noticed something else, a faint shimmer in the air, as if light bent slightly near the edge of the wall. Without speaking, she reached out, and the wall rippled beneath her fingers like water. A doorway appeared, not a grand or sudden one, but a gentle curve in the stone, as though the corridor had always continued but was waiting for someone to ask. "I don't think it's about solving something," she whispered. "I think it's about being willing to listen." They stepped through and the air shifted, soft and warm. The corridor on the other side was dimly lit by floating orbs, their glow pulsing gently, like slow, calm breathing. The walls were lined with portraits, but each one was faded, not empty, just waiting. Each had the sense of a story that hadn't yet been told. One frame stood out, a silver lining, pale and luminous, and within it, a soft mist. As they approached, the mist swirled, revealing a scene, an empty classroom lit only by moonlight through arched windows. The painting was inviting them. Ron hesitated. "We're not actually going in there, are we?" Harry nodded gently. "I think we are." Hermione stepped forward first. As her hand brushed the canvas, she didn't pass through, but rather, the world of the painting reached out and folded around her, like the slow embrace of a dream. One by one, they followed, and the moment they crossed, the world grew still. They were inside the painting, but this wasn't like the others. The space was quiet, not hollow, but meaningful. The room held a sense of memory, of things once whispered and now resting. A chalkboard stood untouched, and desks were tucked in neat rows, but dust did not cling. It felt lived in, yet paused, waiting. Hermione moved to a bookshelf along the wall, fingers tracing the spines. Each book bore no title, yet as she touched them, she felt emotions, curiosity, longing, peace. "These aren't books for reading," she murmured. "They're books for remembering." Harry wandered to the windows. Outside the painting's classroom, the view showed a different Hogwarts, perhaps older, perhaps not quite real. The stars blinked in constellations that didn't exist anymore. "It's a version of Hogwarts no one remembers," he said softly, "a memory kept in paint." Ron had settled near the desk at the front of the room. "Maybe this is where the portrait came from. Whoever used to be in that frame, they were a part of this place, and maybe they've just moved on." Hermione looked up. "Or maybe they're waiting for us to understand something." The room shimmered gently, and the chalk on the board moved on its own, spelling out slow, looping words. "Not every secret is meant to be solved. Some are meant to be shared." It was not a riddle, it was an offering, and so they sat, quietly. No questions, no puzzles, just presence. Each one chose to reflect, not on what was unknown, but on what they had always quietly known. Harry thought of the portraits of his parents, Hermione of the feeling she had the first time she truly felt she belonged. Ron of his family and the deep love that always held them together, even in silence. The painting slowly began to dim, not with finality, but with the soft grace of a dream ending. The message was clear. The figure from the empty frame had not vanished. They had made space for others, for new memories, for those who chose to notice the quiet things. They stepped back out of the painting one by one, emerging again into the secret corridor where the shimmer on the wall gently closed behind them. And now, where the empty frame once hung, a new scene appeared of three friends sitting in a quiet classroom lit by moonlight, watching nothing and everything at once. "It's us," Ron said, softly smiling. "We're the ones in the painting now." Hermione placed a hand to her chest, moved by the stillness of it all, not because we discovered something, but because we listened. Harry nodded, his eyes warm, and because someone, somewhere, wanted to be remembered, not loudly, just gently. And with that, they returned to the common room, steps lighter, hearts steadier. The fire was still glowing softly. The other portraits remained asleep, and the castle, it felt quieter, not because it was empty, but because it had just shared something that words could never fully hold. They didn't speak much after that. They simply sat by the fire, wrapped in the warmth of what they now understood, that in Hogwarts, even the quietest corners held wonders, waiting not for heroes, but for those who would listen. And the painting, it remained, no longer empty, quietly glowing with the memory of those who had cared enough to look beyond the surface. A secret, not lost, just gently passed on. The hour was deep, where silence becomes its own kind of music, and the castle seemed to breathe in long, slow rhythms. The trio had returned to their common room, but none of them spoke of sleep just yet. Instead, they sat by the fire, letting its quiet glow settle over them like a soft blanket. But just as Hermione reached for the last page of her notes, something happened, not loud or alarming, but unmistakably magical. The fire, which had burned in steady embers, suddenly shimmered with a bluish hue, as if moonlight had found its way into the heart of the flames. The warmth remained, but now the light flickered with something else, something from another time. Within the soft swirl of flame and shadow, an image began to form, not sharp, but slow and layered, like a memory rising through fog. They leaned in slightly, not daring to speak, their breaths shallow, their hearts still. For within the dancing fire, they saw a figure, not in full form, but in gesture, a hand reaching to adjust a frame, a robe swirling as if caught by a soft draft, and most unmistakably, a smile, gentle, understanding, tired, but proud. Hermione whispered, "It's her." The mysterious figure who had once occupied the empty frame, not just a ghost, not merely a painted image, but someone who had walked these halls, lived stories not written in books, and chosen to fade rather than be forgotten in the wrong way. The fire offered no words, but the air was thick with meaning. The figure in the flame wasn't there to be solved like a puzzle. She was there to be felt, to remind them that some presences never truly leave. They transform, they echo, They guide from places too soft to touch, but too strong to erase. And then the insight came, not loud or blinding, but as soft as a breath drawn in the dark. Hermione blinked slowly, her voice tender. She didn't disappear because she was forgotten. She chose to go, to give her place in the wall to someone else who might need it more. A portrait's frame, Harry added, isn't just for decoration. It's a doorway, a boundary, and she stepped beyond it. Ron, quieter than usual, murmured, "She moved on, but not in a sad way. She made space for something new, like a teacher stepping back so the student can speak." It was then they understood. The figure wasn't haunting the frame. She was teaching through absence, through mystery, through that most powerful of Hogwarts magics, quiet understanding. The trio sat back, letting the fire dim once more to its usual amber hue. But they no longer felt that the room was small. They felt surrounded by layers of time, of memory, of hidden kindnesses tucked into stone. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the room, not from the fire, but from behind them. The other portraits, those who had once pretended to sleep, were awake, not in alarm, but in harmony. Their eyes twinkled, some smiled, some nodded. One portrait of an old witch with spectacles and a woolen shawl even dabbed her eye with a painted handkerchief. It was as though the entire gallery had been waiting, not for proof, but for understanding. Then, something even more surprising occurred. The empty frame, the one that had started it all, shimmered once more. But this time, it filled not with a person, but with a soft, glimmering light. A memory, perhaps, or an invitation. And within that light appeared a new image, not a stranger, but the three of them, sitting quietly by the fire, their faces calm, their eyes reflecting something unseen. "It's us," Hermione whispered. "No," Harry corrected softly, his voice gentle with realization. "It's what we became, because we listened." The frame wasn't preserving a face, it was preserving a moment of care, of attention, of peaceful discovery. A reminder that magic wasn't always in the grand things, in spells or curses or explosions. Sometimes, the greatest enchantment was in the choice to care. The insight settled upon them like snow falling on warm shoulders. The portrait had moved not to frighten, but to pass on something sacred, the importance of observation, the weight of quiet magic, the value of stories not written down. Ron chuckled softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "So we're art now. Better make sure I don't pick my nose while asleep." They all laughed, a quiet, tender sound, not breaking the moment, but anchoring it in realness. Even in the presence of something magical, they were still themselves, friends, explorers, listeners of the soft and sacred. The portrait remained glowing, but no longer shifting. It had told its story, and in doing so, it had given them something more precious than a mystery solved. It had given them understanding. "I think that's what Hogwarts does," Hermione said at last. "It leaves little pieces of truth in unexpected corners, not to be hunted, just to be found, gently." Harry nodded, resting his head against the back of the chair. "And not just by us. Anyone willing to sit still long enough might find them." And Ron, stretching his legs toward the fire, added, "Then maybe that's what we do too. Leave something behind for the next ones. A kindness, a quiet story, a little magic in the walls." Outside, the night remained still, but inside, something had changed. Not loudly, not visibly, but deeply. The common room had grown quieter now, the flickering fire casting sleepy shadows across the stone walls, as if the very room itself was preparing to rest. Outside the tall windows, the stars shimmered faintly through a veil of slow-moving clouds, and the soft sound of wind brushing against the glass gave the night a gentle rhythm, like a lullaby whispered by the sky. Hermione tucked her notes away, not because they were finished, but because they could wait. There was no need to hurry anymore, no urgency to solve or explain. The portrait's secret had unfolded with such softness that it left behind not excitement, but stillness, the kind that settles deep in your chest and makes everything feel quietly right. Ron had curled up at one end of the couch, a blanket draped over him like a sleeping cat, his eyes half-lidded and his breathing slow. Beside him, Harry leaned back into the cushions, his gaze fixed on the empty frame, but now it didn't feel empty at all. It felt full in a way that only something invisible could be, full of meaning, full of memory, full of peace. "It's funny," he said softly, not turning away from the frame. "We spent all this time thinking the mystery was about her, but maybe it was about us." Hermione, seated closest to the fire, nodded gently. "Some stories don't want to be solved. They just want to be listened to, held for a while, carried like a quiet echo." The portrait hadn't spoken. It hadn't revealed a name, a past, or a tale wrapped in drama, but it had moved, and in that movement, it had stirred something delicate and lasting, like a breeze through long-forgotten parchment, or the turning of a page in a storybook no one knew was open. There were no fireworks, no spells cast, no booming voices, only warmth, only presence, only the realization that sometimes the most magical thing is noticing what others pass by. From one of the nearby portraits, a kind-looking wizard with a velvet hat gave a nod of approval, then slowly turned and drifted off into his own painted dreams. The other portraits followed, returning to stillness, their moment of shared awareness now folded back into the soft slumber of the castle's walls. The frame, though still glowing faintly, seemed content. It had been seen. It had been understood. And like any old guardian of memory, that was all it had ever asked. As the fires settled into a deep embered hum, Hermione reached over to gently close the journal that had started it all. The soft thump of parchment meeting cover echoed like a punctuation mark at the end of a whispered story. "Tomorrow," she murmured, "we'll write it down, not everything, just enough." Harry smiled, a secret worth sharing, but gently. Ron, eyes now fully closed, muttered, "Only if I get credit for the bravery part." They laughed softly, their voices wrapping around each other like well-worn scarves. There was nothing more to uncover tonight, only the magic of silence, of being still in a room that had given them more than they had expected, but exactly what they needed. With slow, sleepy steps, they began to rise. No rush, no chatter, just the sound of robes brushing against old floors and slippers moving quietly toward the dormitory stairs. The painting frame remained behind, its presence still glowing faintly in the dim light, not calling for attention, but existing in peace, watching, waiting, content. Upstairs, as they each settled into their beds, Hermione with her thoughts drifting like feathers, Harry with the image of the soft smile in the flames, and Ron already half snoring into his pillow, Hogwarts embraced them. Its towers wrapped in moonlight, its hallways hushed, its portraits dreaming in colors only old magic could understand. And somewhere within that grand, ancient castle, the echo of a moving frame whispered into the dark, "Thank you." But only the night heard it, and that was enough. The painting was no longer empty, nor were they. And now, dear one, as the soft whispers of the night settle gently around you, let your eyes rest and your heart grow still. The empty frame still hangs there, deep in the heart of Hogwarts, not quite empty anymore, not since you and those brave young hearts chose to listen, not since you noticed what others had passed by. There are some secrets too quiet for spells, too tender for words, some truths that ask only to be felt, and perhaps somewhere in your own world, there are quiet corners like that too, a window that feels a little warmer than the rest, a hallway that holds a memory, though no one speaks of it, or maybe, just maybe, a painting that once blinked when no one was watching. In a place as old as Hogwarts, magic is often gentle. It doesn't always arrive with a crackle of light or a flash of sound. Sometimes it tiptoes in on soft feet, curling up beside you like a sleepy cat, whispering comfort, offering wonder, asking nothing in return. So take a breath, my sleepy friend. Let your thoughts drift like parchment caught in a lazy breeze. There's nothing to solve tonight, nothing to chase. You've wandered through a world of mystery, wrapped in kindness, and now it's time to rest. Let your dreams carry you, softly, back through the quiet halls of the castle, past the sleeping portraits, past the library door that creaks only for the curious, past the common room with its crackling firelight, and back to that little frame on the wall. It waits for no one. It hurries for nothing. And yet, it saw you, it remembers. And if ever, in your waking hours, the world feels too loud, too fast, too full, remember this: there is always a place, deep within the heart of magic, where quiet things are heard, and even an empty frame can hold a secret worth dreaming of. Good night, sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with gentle wonder and just enough mystery to make you smile.